Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perdichizzi, and thank you for joining me. As always, the 2025 NFL Draft concluded last night. If you missed any of the Saturday to Sunday Football Recap podcast, please go back and listen to them. I had a recap of night one, my thoughts on every single pick in round one. A day two recap, my thoughts on every single pick from rounds 2 and 3, sharing my film thoughts, sharing my favorite picks, least favorite picks, questionable decisions, moves I loved. And then just last night, day 3 recap, I went through every single pick in rounds 4 and 5, my film thoughts, liked it, disliked it, questionable, good value, and then also went through every offensive skill player for the most part in rounds 6 and 7, and any other picks that really stood out in round 6 and 7 as well. We will get back into the breaking down of the draft classes in terms of every single team. There will be a podcast breaking down every single, probably going to do it by division again. So there'll be a podcast recapping every team in the NFC East, then the AFC East, so on and so forth. So probably 8 short podcasts where I spend 5-6 minutes on each team, going through my thoughts on their entire draft, favorite pick, best value, most questionable decision, ranking the draft classes from each of the teams in that division. But today, I should say, we pivot for the people in the dynasty aspect, the people who watch me, who follow me for my dynasty takes, my dynasty rookie rank takes. I know some people start their dynasty rookie drafts literally today. Some people are set to start them tomorrow. Some people are set to start them sometime next week. So I wanted to put out there my initial dynasty rookie ranks. If you follow me on Twitter, about 10, 20 minutes ago, I put up a image of where my dynasty rookie rankings currently are right now. These are my initial dynasty rookie rankings. I worked on them last night, this morning. This is where I am right now. These rankings are very fluid. I probably don't have any of my rookie drafts for about a month, but I will continue to analyze as we see more ADP stuff out there, analyze from that perspective, continue to look at depth charts, opportunity to kind of see where I might do some adjustments. So these rankings are very fluid. The big board in particular, very fluid. I think the movement within the positional ranks would be minimal, but not crazy, especially as you get towards the latter part of the rankings. As I dig in a little bit deeper, I could see myself changing a lot and some small movement up top. But the overall big board, I think, is always a struggle to try to, situate where the, say, 4th round running backs and 5th round running backs go compared to the wide receivers with top 100 draft capital, right? So there's always a little bit of a struggle. It's very dependent upon maybe your depth chart in your league, what you have, what you need, how many do you start at these? Are you just really drafting bench guys? Do we need 4? Like, I'm in leagues that start 4 running backs. That's a very different approach than leagues that start 2 running backs. You need to constantly be taking chances on those leagues that start 4 running backs. So I think that pushes the value up of those guys in terms of those day 3 running backs a little bit more than those round 3, round 4 wide receivers. So these are general rankings. They are fluid. They will change a lot. I will discuss those changes periodically on the podcast. I will discuss those changes periodically on Twitter. If you want up to the minute, every time I make a change, you could see it. Well, that's in the premium notebooks. The rankings notebook is a part of the package. You get all 3 for $9.99. You could check it, and I probably will make some minor adjustments almost every single day, for a while as I, just gather more information and fine tune things. And one day I might rank these guys one way, and the next day slightly adjust this trio that I have basically in the same tier. So that's just kind of setting the stage for these rankings in terms of it is a challenge to put them in a big board. Every league is different. I did my big board as a Superflex. I do think we have to take into account draft capital. I think we got to take into account immediate opportunity. You can't have this long-term vision in Dynasty. Things change too quickly. If you look at positional Dynasty ranks right now and then look at what they were 2 years ago, I think you would be stunned to see just how drastic the rankings are different. obviously the elite of the elite, some of those guys are still at the top. But after you get through some of those guys, I think you'd be stunned to see how drastic the rankings change. So I think you really got to live in a 3 to 5 year window. Running backs, I almost think you got to live in a 2-year window, 2 to 3 years. Wide receivers, I think you could stretch it out a little bit more to a 4 to 5 year window. But you do also have to take into account immediate opportunity, because there's a couple guys who I love who, if it takes them a couple years to really move up the depth chart, you're losing out on 2 productive years. So, you would really need the weight to be worth it and big time performance once the wait is over. So that's something you also got to consider as well. So let's get right into it. The quarterback position. Cam Ward, obviously number 1, now with Tennessee. Jackson Dart, number 2, drafted by the Giants in round 1. We have Jalen Milroe as my number 3 ranked quarterback. He's in Seattle. He was a late 3rd round pick. Tyler Shough went to New Orleans, the top of this 2nd round. I have Shedeur Sanders, who ended up in Cleveland as a 5th round pick, as my number 5 quarterback. I have Dillon Gabriel, who also ended up in Cleveland as my 6th ranked rookie quarterback. I have Will Howard, 7, who ended up in Pittsburgh. I still am under the belief Aaron Rodgers is coming, and I don't think Will Howard is the future starter there. We'll see. If there's no Aaron Rodgers this year, he might have some sneaky value for the short term. Quinn Ewers, who ended up with Miami as a late 7th round pick. Riley Leonard, who was a day 3 pick, late in day 3 to the Colts. Number 10 is Curtis Rourke, who ended up at San Francisco late in day 3. Kyle McCord is my 11th. While I liked him more on film, he ended up with Philadelphia. He's not going to be a starter at Philadelphia, so I pushed him down the board to number 11. And then number 12, Graham Mertz, who ended up in Houston. Not a lot of tough decisions here. Milroe over Shough is not a tough decision for me. I understand Milroe is more of a weight, but his ceiling is so much higher in terms of fantasy that even if Tyler Shough gets on the field this year, I have a hard time envisioning he's anything more than a low quarterback 2, high quarterback 3, and that would be his ceiling, 22nd to 25. And if all things went really well. And I don't think even if he does materialize into their long-term starter, I think we're probably talking about an average starting quarterback at best. He's already, not that I care so much about the age, but there's probably less development to happen with him still. So Jalen Milroe, Sam Darnold's contract is really only a 1-year contract. So let's kind of wait and see what happens there. Milroe is just, to me, worth the investment more than Shough based on if he does get an opportunity to ever start. We're talking about a guy who I don't see how he wouldn't be a top 10 fantasy quarterback with the dual threat ability and what he could offer on the ground. I went with Sanders over Gabriel at 5'6", because I don't know what that was about this weekend. I don't know why Cleveland went with Gabriel in the 3rd round and then Sanders in the 5th. It's hard to say, but I'm going to say that if Stefanski really does have an open opportunity for both of them, I think Shedeur Sanders is leaps and bounds a better quarterback than Dillon Gabriel. But it's hard to have him too high on my overall big board because I'm not really sure he's even going to get that opportunity. What if Jimmy Haslam just went in and told his GM and stuff to draft Shedeur Sanders because he wanted the attention and the pizzazz that came with it? It's possible. I don't know if that's the reason, but it's hard to make out the fall of Shedeur Sanders all the way to the 5th round. And it's really hard to make sense of it that they drafted Dillon Gabriel over him in the 3rd round, but then 2 rounds later, they came back with Shedeur Sanders. Were they torn between the two? And then since Sanders kept falling, they said, why not bring Bolton and let's see what happens? Maybe that's possible. And if that's the case, though, that means I still had Dillon Gabriel ranked higher than him, which, I struggle with. But maybe they just thought Gabriel could run this system and scheme better. But I think Sanders is the perfect scheme fit with Stefanski. So that's where I have them side by side right now until we kind of get some more information. And you're not going to have a lot of information before rookie draft. So it's just going to be, kind of hit yourself in a really deep dynasty league where you have taxi squads. Either one of them is worth an investment because of the opportunity to be the starter there sooner rather than later based on the fact they only have Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco. I went with the guy who obviously I have way higher rated in Shedeur Sanders. So we'll see how that. The rest of the guys, Maybe Will Howard, because we don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to end up there. I don't see any of the other guys ending up on any rosters, even in deep dynasty leagues. Ewers, Leonard, Rourke, McCord, Mertz. I don't see any of them worth an investment, even on a taxi squad. I'd rather take a stab at some, practice squad, developmental running back types, UDFA types at the other positions. Let's take this to the running back position and share my ranks. Number 1 is Ashton Genty, who went to the Raiders at pick 6. Omarion Hampton, who went in the first round to the Chargers. Number 3 is Travion Henderson, who went to New England, the top of the second. Number 4 is Quinshon Judkins, his former teammate, I should say, who went to Cleveland at the top of the second. Number 5 is Caleb Johnson, who ended up with Pittsburgh with their 3rd round pick. Would love to know if they would have taken him at the end of the 2nd round, if they happened to have if they hadn't traded that 2nd round pick for DK Metcalf. Number 6 is RJ Harvey, who was a surprise 2nd round pick to Denver. Most people thought he was more of a late 3 to early 4, but Sean Payton fell in love with him. Number 7 is Cam Scadaboo, who was the 3rd pick of the 4th round to the Giants. Number 8 is Bashal Tudin, who was the early 4th round pick to the Jaguars. Number 9 is Dylan Sampson. Cleveland double dipped at the running back position. Dylan Sampson was a top 5 running back pre-draft for me. Jaden Blue is my number 10 ranked Dynasty rookie running back, who ended up with Dallas, and there's a lot of touches to go around out of that Dallas backfield. Houston traded up early in the 4th round and selected Woody Marks. He's my 11th ranked running back. Number 12 is Jarquez Hunter with the Rams, who invested him in the 4th round. Number 13 is Trevor Etienne, who was a 4th round pick for Carolina. Number 14 is Devin Neal, who was a 6th round pick for the Saints, but I do like the opportunity there after Alvin Kamara. Number 15 is DJ Giddens with the Colts, who I do think has the opportunity to quickly emerge to be Jonathan Taylor's backup. 16 is Jordan James out of San Francisco. We know Christian McCaffrey's had some injury concerns. We know the 49ers run scheme usually makes fantasy superstars of anyone who gets the opportunity. They moved on from Jordan Mason. They traded him. They have as Guerrero. I think Jordan James and I like Guerrero and some of his physical traits, but I like Jordan James a lot. I comped him to Bucky Irving. If he would have went into a different situation, I think he could have really materialized. Obviously, now I think it's more of an injury waiting to happen. But if he gets an opportunity, I could see him being very successful in that Kyle Shanahan scheme. Number 17 is Brashard Smith, former wide receiver converted to running back. Kansas City took him late in the 7th round, but I'm intrigued by him. Kansas City didn't make any other investments at the running back position. We've seen a scenario where they took Isaiah Pacheco, who is a late round or even UDFA prospect, and he materialized into their clear-cut starter. So they're not afraid to give significant reps and stuff to a rookie without draft capital. And I just think he could be very much a Jerick McKinnon-like role, but also be a guy who sees touches in terms of his rushing ability as well. And if he starts producing, they might not be able to get him off the football field as much as they would have expected. So I like the opportunity there that resides for Brashard Smith with only Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. I think they signed Elijah Mitchell as well, but there's opportunity there. And 18, Taj Brooks with the Bengals. And 19, Kamanungai to the Bears. Number 20, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt with the Commanders. 21, Ollie Gordon ended up with Miami late on day 3. 22, Seattle drafted late Damian Martinez. 23 is Phil Maffa, who ended up with Dallas. We talked about Jaden Blue before. A lot of opportunity there if Phil Maffa gets an opportunity. 24 is Khalil Mullins out of Tennessee, who's now with Tennessee. And 25 is LaQuint Allen Jr., who ended up with Jacksonville. Those are the 25 running backs that were drafted, which I have ranked right now. I'm not going to get into any UDFAs today. I'll probably do an episode talking about some UDFAs to keep on your radar. So a couple things at the running back position that I think were intriguing. After day 2, I was torn between Henderson and Judkins as my 3rd running back. I stuck with Henderson, but to me, it was a real coin flip at the time, just because I liked Henderson slightly more pre-draft, more explosive, could be used in the Devin A-Chain, Jahmyr Gibbs-like way. What made me definitively stick with that was the selection of Dylan Sampson, also to Cleveland, in round 4. So I think they're going to have a real opportunity. They're coming in the same time. I know Judkins has the higher draft capital, and I think that gives him a pretty significant leg up to be the lead of that backfield. But I do think Dylan Sampson is very talented. So I could see a scenario where that eventually is more of a committee than we would like. Now, it doesn't really impact my interest in Quinshon Judkins. I have him very high in my overall big board. I'll get to that after. But that was my tiebreaker here between TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. The selection of Dylan Sampson made me feel pretty confident that TreVeyon Henderson kind of stood alone, and it wasn't as much of a discussion as it was at the end of day 2. I think Caleb Johnson and RJ Harvey is an interesting discussion. RJ Harvey has about a half a round, a little bit more than half a round draft capital. But as I mentioned before, who's to say Pittsburgh wouldn't have drafted Caleb Johnson at the end of the second round if they had not traded that pick for DK Metcalf? I just kind of stuck back on they're both great opportunities. I think they both could lead their backfield this year in yards, attempts, touchdowns. Pittsburgh has Jaylen Warren, who's going to be involved. We know Arthur Smith wants to run a two-back, committee, but more skewed towards one guy. I think that guy will be Caleb Johnson. Sean Payton's always had multiple of backs be involved. I don't see that changing, and RJ Harvey be this 20-touch guy a game. They drafted Audric Estime last year. He could very much be the second guy there, or, we'll see who else that is in the mix there for Denver. Another tough ranking was right after them, the 7-8 spot. I'm locked in to Scadaboo and Tuden, but I think you can go either way with ranking them. It sounds like Jacksonville really wanted Bashal Tuden. I think they have big plans for him. He offers more explosiveness and big playability, but we got to wait out Travis Etienne for a year, before he becomes a free agent, or if they trade him at some point. I think Bigsby's still there. Bashal Tuden's an average receiver, but more of a home run threat, bigger play. Cam Scadaboo, on the other hand, ends up with the Giants. Tyron Tracy was unbelievable last year. I think they're going to form a really nice 1-2 duo. Is that 1-2 duo going to hinder how much fantasy production? Because I could see a world where Bashal Tuden eventually is the lead guy with Jacksonville. They trade Etienne, Bigsby's the backup, Tuden's the lead guy. The Giants really like Tyron Tracy, and he offers a very unique skill set as well. So even if Scadaboo eventually was to ever to take the lead, Tracy's going to be right there with him. I don't think it would ever be a 70-30. I think it would be like a 60-40, 55-45 between those guys. And I love Tracy Lesher, and I love Scadaboo. They're both my guys. There's things that Scadaboo does better than Tyron Tracy. There are things that Tyron Tracy does better than Scadaboo. I ended up having Scadaboo one slot higher just because I do think he's going to immediately be more involved, to the point where Tuden this year, I think it's going to be hard to see him have much fantasy production on a consistent basis unless they make a move and move off of Etienne, unless they just totally send Bigsby, down the depth chart. It could either be a triple-headed monster, or he's just going to get, almost like Jalen Wright last year, just kind of got bits and pieces, which he was a big play guy too, just like Tuden is. So it's tough to see that. But I think Scadaboo is going to be very much involved this year for the Giants. I don't think Devin Singletary is much of a threat. They started to slowly pull back from him late last year when Tracy was looking good. I think Scadaboo will be right there. But I could easily see somebody having them the other way. After that, Dylan Sampson was solidly my number 9. And then I think you start to really open it up. Jaden Blue, Woody Marks, Jarquez Hunter, Trevor Etienne, those guys all were 4th-round draft capital. I put Blue at the top, mostly based on opportunity and big playability. That's Jaden Blue's calling card. Receiver, space player, big playability. Dallas has a lot of touches to go around. So that's why I had Jaden Blue before those. Woody Marks, Houston came up to get him. It's still going to be the Joe Mixon show this year. But I'm interested with is Woody Marks is a great receiver. Is that all Houston wanted and thinks of him when they came up? Or do they see a guy like Woody Marks and say, maybe not to the same style player, but do they look at him and say, why can't he be our Bucky Irving? Tampa Bay already had Rachaad White. Look what Bucky Irving did when he came there. They might look at Woody Marks as a guy who this year's pass catching role back up to Joe Mixon. But if Joe Mixon moves on after the year, do they envision a scenario where Woody Marks could also be a decent part of the run game? And if they do that with his great receiving ability, then I think he probably should even be ahead of Jaden Blue. Because I do think Dallas at some point will invest in a running back that will make Jaden Blue more of a complementary. I don't think that guy is, I think Javonte Williams will be force-fed rushes this year. I just don't think he's very good. So I think Jaden Blue is going to get a lot of opportunity in year one. Jarquez Hunter is fascinating because they just drafted Blake Corum last year. They have Kyron Williams. Hard to think Kyron Williams is going to be back a year from now after investing in Blake Corum in the third round and then Jarquez Hunter in the fourth round. And it seems to be plug and play. Whoever is that running back for the Rams, they produce. I'm not sure they're going to want to re-sign Kyron Williams. They might say, thank you for the really productive years here. We're going to move on to Corum and Hunter and probably get similar production for a fraction of the cost if Kyron Williams is looking to get a running back payday. I'm not going to say a big payday because running backs rarely get big paydays, but they might not even be willing to pay him $8, $9, $10, $11 million, whatever it would cost to bring back Kyron Williams if they think Corum and Hunter can take the reign. After that, from Hunter, Etienne, Neal, Giddens, Jordan James, I think those guys can be ranked in any which way. There will probably be movement in that aspect of my rankings as I start to, do my own drafts and look into it a little bit more. So I kind of have them all bunched together, even in my overall big board. And then Brashard Smith, Taj Brooks, Kamanangai. I talked about Brashard Smith before. A little intrigue with Taj Brooks, though, and Kamanangai, because Cincinnati doesn't have a clear backup to Chase Brown. I think Taj Brooks could be a better version of Zach Moss. And then Kamanangai, does Ben Johnson look at him and think that he could be his new David Montgomery-esque type player? And if so, there might be some touches to go around the Kamanangai. They didn't invest in anything else. DeAndre Swift isn't this guy that needs to be on the field for X amount of plays. There might be an opening there. And same thing with the Bengals. I don't think they want to give Chase Brown this heavy workload. He doesn't profile as that. So could Taj Brooks get an opportunity as well? I think that's something that we got to look at. We got to consider when we're talking about ranking these guys. Let's take this to the wide receivers. Number 1 is Travis Hunter, who ended up with Jacksonville. Number 2 is Ted McMillan, went top pick 8 overall to Carolina. The other 2 first-round wide receivers were Matthew Golden, who ended up with Green Bay, and then Emeka Egbuka, who ended up at the Bucs. Number 5 is Jack Besh, who went to the Vegas Raiders in the second round. Number 6 is Kyle Williams, who ended up with the Patriots as an early third-round pick. Number 7 is Jane Higgins, who went to Houston at the top of the second. Number 8 is Luther Burden, who went to Chicago at the top of the second. Number 9 was Trey Harris, who went to the Chargers late in the second round. Number 10 is Jalen Noel. Houston double-dipped with Iowa State wide receivers on the same day of the draft. So Jalen Noel was round 3. Jaden Higgins was round 2. Number 11 was Jalen Royals, who Kansas City drafted late in the fourth round. Surprised that he fell that far. Number 12 was Pat Bryant, who was a surprise round 3 pick to the Broncos. Number 13 was Alec Iomanner, who was the second wide receiver the Titans drafted in round 4. Number 14 was Jalen Lane out of Washington. Number 15 was the other Tennessee wide receiver they drafted in the fourth round, which is Chimere Dike. Number 16 was Dante Thornton Jr., who the Raiders took in the early fourth. 17 was Torrey Horton, who is a sixth-round pick, surprisingly, to the Seahawks. Number 18, 19, and 20 were 3 third-round wide receiver picks, which just is usually far down the board for third-round wide receiver picks. But 18 was Savion Williams, who's maybe more of an offensive weapon in a crowded depth chart there for Green Bay, who also invested in Marcus Golden in round 1 and has Romeo Doubs and has Jaden Reed and has Christian Watson and has Dontavian Wicks. So it's hard, even as with the third round draft capital, to get him much higher in this ranks because of the situation he's stepping into. Number 19 is Isaac Tesla to the Lions, who made a major jump up, giving up 2 future third-round picks to make sure they got Isaac Tesla. So you would like to think they have a clear plan for him, but it's hard to get even remotely excited for fantasy because Amon-Ra St. Brown is the guy. I think they have all intents and purposes to re-sign Jameson Williams when his contract's up. He offers a completely different skill set than anybody else they have on the team, and he's finally starting to come together after a rough first 2 years with the suspension, the injury, stuff like that. So you add in Sam Laporta, you add in Jahmyr Gibbs, who's an elite pass-catching running back, and it's impossible to see guys like Tesla as not the fifth option, even if he looks good, earns playing time as the third wide receiver. Hard to think option 5 in the pass game is going to have any type of fantasy value. And the same can be said about one of my guys I really liked, Ty Felton, who's my 20th ranked wide receiver, who ended up in Minnesota in late round 3. They have the best wide receiver arguably in football in Justin Jefferson. They have a great number 2 in Jordan Addison. They have one of the better pass catching tight ends in TJ Hawkinson. Yes, there's an opportunity for a third wide receiver to earn a lot of playing time, but that's the fourth option at best in the passing game. How much production is that going to lead to? So Ty Felton's in there 20, even with the decent draft capital, I think he might bring more real life tactical value than fantasy value. After that, I'll run through the rest of the guys who got drafted. Number 21 is Keandre Lambert-Smith, who ended up with the Chargers as a late day free pick. Number 22 is Jordan Watkins, who was a surprise pick by the 49ers late in the 4th round. Number 23 was Jimmy Horn, who went to Carolina in the late day free. I broke my rule here and did add one UDFA prospect to my rankings, and that's it for this podcast. And that there are some UDFA prospects on the rankings in the notebook. Number 24 is Xavier Restrepo, and I added him because of the connection he has with Cam Ward. So Tennessee does not have a lot of good pass catchers, to put it nicely. The connection that Ward has with Restrepo, I think there's a real opportunity that Restrepo makes that roster, and I could see a scenario, even as a UDFA prospect, that he gets an opportunity to be a slot wide receiver for them sooner rather than later, especially with the chemistry he has with their new franchise quarterback, Cam Ward. 25, I have Tej Johnson. Love the player, but he was a 7th round pick. They already drafted Emeka Egbuka in round 1. They already have Jalen McMillan, who was a round 3 pick last year. And then, oh yeah, by the way, their 2 locked-in starting wide receivers in 2 wide receiver sets are Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And they kept Chris Godwin this offseason with a big contract. So hard to envision a scenario where he gets an opportunity to play a lot. So that's why Tej Johnson down where he is, even though I like the player. Bad draft capital, bad situation and opportunity. 26 is LeJohntay Webster out of Baltimore. 27, the surprise pick of the 4th round was Arian Smith. Even with an open opportunity with the Jets, I struggle to see how Arian Smith's going to have fantasy value. He couldn't have consistent production as a receiver at Georgia in college when he was so much faster than everybody that you would have thought that they could have found ways to just use that speed. So I don't envision a scenario where besides him stretching the field and creating that type of tactical value, there's much fantasy production or much even receiving production from that selection. 28 is Kanata Mumfield. He went to the Rams late in day 3. 29 is Ricky White, who ended up with Seattle. And then the last couple guys, Tommy Mallet, the quarterback converted to wide receiver, went to the Raiders in the 6th round. And then 30, Caden Prater went to the Buffalo, late 7th round. Dominic Lovett went to Detroit late in the draft. I like Dominic Lovett, the player, a lot, but everything I said about Tesla stands for Lovett, who has 4 rounds less draft capital than Tesla and not much opportunity there in Detroit. And then 31, Junior Burgett ended up with San Francisco, more of a special teams player, but classified as a wide receiver. So I kind of did talk about some of the situations there. A couple things. I think Matthew Golden and Emeka Egbuka is a tough one right at the top. I leaned Golden, and it was, again, they were back-to-back in my pre-draft ranks. So I did have Golden one spot higher than Egbuka. I just think even with the crowded depth chart in Green Bay, they don't have a guy who clearly is the lead guy. So I think there's an opportunity for Golden to get more targets, more opportunity right out of the gate in year 1. While Egbuka, it's hard to envision a scenario where he's not the 3rd wide receiver or the 3rd option this year. This is kind of very reminiscent of Jackson Smith and Najigba going to Seattle, where they had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett locked in, 2 guys who've been with the team for a long time. it took Jackson Smith-Njigba some time before he emerged into the player. I think we're probably looking at that with Egbuka. So that was my difference of why I had Golden ahead of him. I could understand if someone likes Egbuka more or likes the situation better, but I like Jordan Love and Baker Mayfield. I personally like Jordan Love a little better, but they're close and similar. That's not going to make it. So for me, it's just immediate opportunity. I think Egbuka is more of a play for like 3 years from now, like 2 seasons, and then maybe he starts to really materialize. But I think Evans hasn't showed any signs of slowing down. If Godwin's back from his injury, and I think Tampa Bay believes that, or they would have let him go to the Patriots and wouldn't have offered him the contract they did. So I went with Golden over Egbuka for those reasons. I think one of the hardest wide receiver spots to rank is the 5, 6, 7 spot. And somebody might even say add in number 8, who I have, Luther Burden. But let me go with my 5, 6, 7, which is Besh, Kyle Williams, and Jaden Higgins. 2 of them have second-round draft capital. Kyle Williams, early third-round draft capital. Besh and Kyle Williams are a toss-up right now for me. I have Besh at number 5. I have Williams at 6, followed by Jaden Higgins at 7. If Houston doesn't draft Jaden Higgins' teammate, Jalen Noel, at the start of the 3rd round, I probably have Higgins at number 5, and then Besh, and then Kyle Williams. But we know Nico Collins is the main guy there. And then they drafted both Iowa State wide receivers in the 2nd, 3rd round. But I think Jalen Noel's better than Jaden Higgins. But the draft capital says Houston doesn't feel that way. So I wanted Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel a little closer together. I have Jalen Noel at 10. I struggled putting Higgins up at 5 and Jalen Noel down at 10 when I think Noel is a better player, is only 1 round less draft capital, and they're on the same team. They might also hurt each other's value by fighting for the 2nds and 3rds after Nico Collins. Besh and Kyle Williams, I think, can make the case either or at the 5, 6 spot. Luther Burden is a tough one because anyone who's been watching my show knows how much I love Luther Burden. And he has great draft capital with early 2nd round. But I struggled to put him over Besh, Kyle Williams, and Jaden Higgins, who I think all 3 of those guys are going to be heavily involved from day one with similar draft capital to Luther Burden. Luther Burden in Chicago, we're not talking about older guys like Evans or even a guy in his prime or maybe slowly on the back of it in Godwin. We're talking about DJ Moore, who's still very much in his prime, not coming off an injury like Chris Godwin is. Rome Odunze, who was considered a clear alpha wide receiver and a top 10 pick in last year's draft. And oh, by the way, they selected a tight end with the 10th pick in the draft this year, who they envision as a clear pass catching role and a major focal point of the offense. So if you play this out, if DJ Moore sticks around for a while, it's hard to see Luther Burden being anything more than the 4th option. Even if at some point DJ Moore moves on, there's still Rome Odunze, there's still Colston Loveland. So there's a lot of paths here. I think Ben Johnson's going to do amazing stuff there in Chicago, and I think he's going to utilize Luther Burden in a lot of creative ways, and I think they pivoted off of Travion Henderson to Luther Burden, but it's tough to see consistent fantasy value. So for me, that's why I had to put him behind Besh, Williams, and Higgins, because I think Besh, Williams, and Higgins are going right into the starting lineup, getting tons of targets, being fantasy impactful from year 1. I don't want to wait 2 years or more for DJ Moore to leave, and then Burden is finally the 2nd wide receiver, but maybe still the 3rd option when these other guys are going to step right in. And Kyle Williams could be New England's number 1 option this year. Jaden Higgins could be Houston's number 2 option this year. Jack Besh could be the Raiders' number 2 option this year after Brock Bowers. So there's paths to these other guys just getting more opportunity right out of the gate, which is why I have Burden at 8. Trey Harris for me was really locked in at number 9. There's a big opening there for the Chargers. And then Jalen Noel really locked in as my number 10 guy. I like Jalen Royals a lot, so I put him there at 11. After that, as we look through the rest of this, things that stood out, I think you can Pat Bryant, who was number 12 for me, Alec Iomanner, 13, Jalen Lane, 14, Chamari Dike at 15. I think you could rank those guys in any which way. There's pros and cons for each of them. I think Torrey Horton's a tough one because a late 6th round pick is not a guy you usually want to feel good about. but he is coming off an injury. You do wonder if that's why he fell by a couple of rounds. And there is an opportunity there in Seattle with really only Jackson Smith-Njigba and Cooper Kupp. And we know Cooper Kupp's done the downswing of his career. So there is a scenario where Torrey Horton could develop into the number 3 wide receiver from this year. And we'll see about Cooper Kupp and his longevity. So there's some aspects of Torrey Horton that make it intriguing. And then I talked about the other guys, Savion Williams, Tesla, and Felton, and my concerns about ranking them. Let's pivot over to my tight end rankings. Colston Loveland, clear number 1 for me as Chicago. Tyler Warren, number 2 with the Colts. Number 3 was Mason Taylor, who ended up with the Jets in the second round. Number 4 is Elijah Arroyo, who ended up with Seattle in the second round. Surprisingly, in the second round, the Rams selected Terrence Ferguson. I thought he was more of a mid-third to late third. Number 6 is Harold Fannin Jr., who went to Cleveland, who will be interesting to see what type of usage they have for him with David Njoku there. And do they not envision extending David Njoku beyond this year with the selection of Harold Fannin? Number 7 is Gunnar Helm out of Tennessee, who went to Tennessee, giving Cam Ward another weapon early in day 3. In the 5th round, the Chargers selected Oronde Gadsden, who's interesting because former wide receiver converted to tight end. Number 9 is Thomas Fedone, who the Giants selected in the 7th round, but he's got more of a pass-catching profile with the similar athleticism to last year's 4th-round pick, Theo Johnson. Number 10 is Mitchell Evans, who went to Carolina, but they also have Jatavian Sanders there, who's a younger, better pass catcher. Number 11 is Luke Lachey, who went to Houston late in the 7th round. And then I did put a couple on UDFA guys next, and that was Joshua Simon, who ended up at Atlanta, and number 13, Jake Brinstool, who ended up in Kansas City. These are pass catchers. So I kind of wanted to sneak them in there. I could see a scenario where Atlanta trades Kyle Pitts during training camp. I could see a scenario where they trade him during the year. I have a very hard time seeing a scenario where they bring him back in a year, even if he plays for them the whole season. Josh Simon was a really intriguing player. Dan Jeremiah talked about him on a couple podcasts as a late-round guy. He thought he was going to get drafted. He had a really good combine, very explosive athleticism, and good pass catcher. So just an interesting name, especially in like your tight end premium leagues. If you have a taxi squad, I would be looking to stash Joshua Simon first, Jake Brinstool second, who ended up in Kansas City. I could see Brinstool if Travis Kelce ever decides to retire. I know they've had a lot of guys, a lot of tight ends in the mix there, but I think Brinstool's got some decent pass catching upside that he'd be an interesting guy to stash away, especially when you're talking about Kansas City. They use the tight end a lot. Brinstool's got some pass catching ability there, so I'm intrigued by that. At 14, the Broncos took the basketball player Caleb Lohner. He had 4 catches last year. I believe all 4 of them were for touchdowns. So Sean Payton obviously saw something he wanted. Didn't want to fight for his services in the UDFA period, so he took him late in the draft, and he's going to try to develop him. My guess is it's probably a couple years before we even see him potentially ever have a real opportunity. I think he's just betting on the basketball background, the athleticism, and seeing if he can become a pass-catching weapon at the next level. Moliki Matavo was my 15th. He ended up with the Saints. Hard to see him more than ever being a tight end 2 or tight end 3. And Gavin Bartholomew ended up with Minnesota. Maybe down the line, he could be a tight end 2 there for Minnesota, but don't see anything more than that. I'm not even going to go for the rest of them. It was Jackson Oz, Robbie Oots. Those are blocking tight ends that maybe could be a tight end 2 on the team, but just for their blocking purposes. So there it is, my positional rankings. There were some aspects that made that challenging in its own right. But what I think putting it together in terms of an entire big board, I think is a really challenging process. Again, it's very independent and very dependent, I should say, on your league settings. But this is kind of where I settled right now. I'm not going to go through all 60. You could see them on my Twitter. I put a picture up of it, Poli23NY. If you don't follow me on Twitter, you can see it. But this is how I have it right now for my Superflex Big Board. Number 1 is Ashton Genty. Number 2 is Travis Hunter. Number 3 is Omarion Hampton. Number 4 is Tet McMillan. Number 5 is Cam Ward. Number 6 is Travion Henderson. Number 7 is Quinshon Judkins. Number 8 is Colston Loveland. Number 9 is Matthew Golden. Number 10 is Tyler Warren. Number 11 is Emeka Egbuka. Number 12 is Caleb Johnson. Number 13 is RJ Harvey. Number 14 is Jackson Dart. Number 15 is Jack Besh. Number 16 is Kyle Williams. Number 17 is Jaden Higgins. Number 18 is Luther Burden. Number 19 is Cam Scatterbo. Number 20 is Bashal Tuden. Number 21 is Trey Harris. Number 22 is Jalen Knoll. Number 23 is Mason Taylor. Number 24 is Elijah Arroyo. 25 was Dylan Sampson. 26 was Jaden Blue. Number 27 was Jalen Milrow. Number 28 was Jalen Royals. Number 29 was Terrence Ferguson. Number 30 was Harold Fannin. Number 31 was Tyler Shuck. Number 32 was Pat Bryant. Number 33 was Alec Iomanner. Number 34 was Jalen Lane. Number 35 was Woody Marks. Number 36 was Jarquez Hunter. Number 37 was Trevor Etienne. Number 38 was Devin Neal. 39, DJ Giddens. 38, DJ Giddens. 39 was DJ Giddens. 40 was Jordan James. 41 was Brashard Smith. 42 was Taj Brooks. 43 was Kyle Monangai. Number 44 was Shedeur Sanders. Number 45 was Shamari DK. 46 was Dante Thornton Jr. 47 was Torrey Horton. 48 was Savion Williams. 49 was Isley Tesla. And number 50, I'll stop at, is Ty Felton. Some of the hardest things in ranking these. If somebody wants to put Cam Ward a little higher, I'm okay with that. But I struggle putting him because I think if he hits, he's probably a Jordan Love-like fantasy player. Low-end QB1. Ashton Genty, not even a conversation. If you're not worried about Travis Hunter not playing offense, shouldn't be a conversation there either. If somebody wanted to put Cam Ward ahead of Omarion Hampton and Ted McMillan, I could kind of understand it. But I just think Omarion Hampton has a real chance to be an RB1. And I think Ted McMillan has a chance to be, I'll say his ceiling is like a mid-wide receiver too. I still think that might be more valuable than Cam Ward. But I could see a scenario where I'd feel more comfortable putting Cam Ward ahead of Ted McMillan than I would Omarion Hampton. Next up, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Colston Loveland. I think that's an interesting trio. Right now, I have Henderson ahead of the running backs ahead of Loveland. I can see a scenario where maybe I move Loveland ahead of Judkins because of Dylan Sampson, but I'm going to lock in Henderson into my top 6. I think you can rearrange the Judkins, Loveland, Golden, Warren, Egbuka very much in a variety of ways. I kind of felt the way I have it right now, but I could see somebody rearranging them a little bit. I think that's an area where I probably will look at some point. Caleb Johnson and RJ Harvey, you already talked about them. You can mix and match them. Talked about Jack Bash, Kyle Williams, Jaden Higgins, and Luther Burden. I will say this is the last thing we talk about is that quad of wide receivers, Jack Bash, Kyle Williams, Jaden Higgins, and Luther Burden. If you put Cam Scatterbo and Bashal Tuden with them, I think ranking those 6 guys is very difficult in a big board. I don't like having 4th round running backs ahead of good draft capital day 2 wide receivers. We see round 4 running backs get drafted over the year after all the time. But I do like the situations a lot of Cam Scatterbo and Bashal Tuden. I think there is paths for them guys to be RB2s. If Jack Bash hits, he's probably a wide receiver at 3. If Kyle Williams hits, he's probably a wide receiver at 3. And these are best case scenarios. Same thing for Jaden Higgins. Luther Burden, while I think the ceiling is higher, to such a low floor early on that he's another interesting one. So I think you have to ask yourself, would you rather the potential of Cam Scatterbo or Bashal Tuden being running back 2s? And I do think they will be given a chance to become running back 2s. Is that greater than these wide receivers with better draft capital being wide receiver 3s? Now, the wide receivers definitely offer you some more safety, I will say, because they are going to get an opportunity, and I think they will be producers at the next level, while the running backs value could really come and go, as we see it so often with running backs. So I do think those 4 receivers and those 2 running backs from 15 to 20, the overall big board is a very tricky to navigate right there. That's the one spot I could see myself really adjusting a lot in terms of as I'm prepping for my own drafts, as I go through my own drafts, adjusting that area here, which is going to make up the good portion of round 2, from Jackson Dart, these 4 wide receivers, these 2 running backs, and then a couple other guys will sneak in. My guess is they're probably guys like Trey Harris, Jalen Knoll, maybe another tight end there would probably make up the rest of your round 2 in terms of a 12-team league. So there it is, guys. My position by position Dynasty Rookie Rankings, my top 50 overall Superflex Big Board, talk through the biggest challenges in the rankings, the parts of my rankings that I think are most fluid and could change as I dig into this a little bit more and more time to process everything that happened on draft weekend. But I did want to get this out initially to everybody who I know a lot of people do start up their rookie drafts right away. If you are enjoying the content, please get over to the website, S2S Football, fastest and easiest way to get there. Check out the premium content tab. For $9.99, you get it all. I talked about it on recent podcasts. It is the lifeblood of what we do. Those notebook purchases just keep us afloat in terms of paying server fees, paying subscription fees, everything that we need to continue to do this here at Saturday to Sunday. Every dollar we earn goes right back into the company to just do here what we do. It's a hobby of mine. It's a passion of mine. I love to do it. So if you could help out, if you've purchased it in the past but didn't grab it this year, please consider purchasing it again. If you're new to Saturday to Sunday and you've never purchased it, go check it out. I think you'll find a lot of value in it for your Dynasty rookie drafts, just learning about the players on both sides of the ball, going further in depth on the offensive players with the detailed scouting reports in the scouting notebook as well. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on Twitter, ask me questions, or there's a contact spot on the website as well. I really hope you enjoyed over the last couple of days the draft recap pods, the Dynasty Rookie Rankings pod. As much as I have enjoyed doing these shows, it's the best time of the year. I love this aspect of it. So I hope you guys stick with me now that the draft season's over. We will not turn the page. I promise you. Most other podcasts turn the page within a week of the NFL draft concluding. We will cover this throughout the rest of the spring here into the summer for get you prepped up for whenever your Dynasty rookie drafts are, get you ready for the season. We won't turn the page and go to the next wave of prospects until sometime in late July. We're going to do the team by team recaps by division. I'm going to have guests on from the industry, a UDFA watch list episode, under the radar episode where I give some more attention to some of these lower guys. If you're really trying to find some diamonds in the rough to kind of stash in your taxi squads late in rookie drafts, guests from the industry. So much here that we'll continue to cover here at Saturday to Sunday. So on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nakano, and myself, thank you for joining us. And we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.